welcome Dr. Moniz. I'm actually very glad you're here because I had a town hall in my district on Saturday back in the Bay Area of California, and a number of my constituents could not believe that in this committee, some of my friends on the other side still have questions and deny that humans play a role in climate change. So their questions here today illustrate that I am not crazy, that is still a debate in this committee. And I put up for you on the screen something from the NASA website called Climate Change, How Do We Know? And there's a graph there of CO2 parts per million on the left side of the graph, and on the bottom side you see over the period of time starting at about 400,000 years ago, going up to about 25,000 years ago, you see a spike. And then, of course, it really spikes around where 1700 would be. And I'm wondering, is there any correlation between the Industrial Revolution and the CO2 parts per million in that graph?
Well, it's quite direct, actually.
And what's the correlation, Dr. Moniz?
It's a very positive correlation. Right.
And what can we assume the cause of the CO2 parts per million going up?
Well, this is exactly what I was referring to earlier in terms of, roughly speaking, counting CO2 molecules. We know how many molecules are emitted. We know how many are in the atmosphere. It tracks quite closely.
And Dr. Moniz, do 97% of scientists, climate scientists, agree that climate warming trends over the past century are very likely due to human activities?
Yes, I've seen 97%, 98% as numbers. Right? I'm not sure how that number is arrived at, but yes.
Thank you. And Dr. Moniz, are you familiar with the National Ignition Facility at Lawrence Livermore Laboratory?
Yes, in general terms. I have not had yet a chance to drill down into it since I've been in the office the last 3 weeks. But
well, better than drill down, I'd like to invite you to come visit the facility. It's in my district. It's also in wine country, so after the tour, we'd be happy to show you around. But
for the tour?
Do you support the National Ignition Facility's dual goal of maintaining our nuclear weapons stockpile and providing scientists with the physics understanding necessary to create fusion ignition and energy gain for future energy production?
Well, I mean, I have to say, I think clearly the principal purpose of the facility has been for stockpile stewardship, and even without ignition, which remains a goal for a few years from now, presumably, that has to be the major focus. Now, clearly, a lot of that work, certainly getting to ignition, will by definition be useful for the ICF purpose.
And you mentioned that just this past week, Oak Ridge's supercomputer is no longer the world's fastest. Mantle, once again claimed by China. Does it trouble you that Russia and China are also beginning to outpace us when it comes to fusion ignition projects?
Well, I think it's more of an across-the-board issue. I think we're in a different world, highly competitive in terms of technology innovation, and we just got to keep out in front.
Would you agree then that the President's fiscal year 2014 budget request for the National Ignition Facility, a cut of $110 million, will set us back in achieving ignition and will cede leadership in the area of fusion ignition to Russia and China?
Well, clearly there were lots of difficult choices to be made, and the Department of Defense, with Department of Energy and OMB, just felt that the needs in stockpile stewardship and stockpile reliability just had to be met in a very tough budget environment.
And Dr. Moniz, the Lawrence Livermore National Lab Director has told me and Congresswoman Lofgren, who has also been an advocate and champion for fusion ignition, that if the President's budget for NIF stands, it will essentially either shut down NIF or set back all of its major goals by at least 10 years. Since NIF began operating in 2009, they were a factor of 1,000 away from achieving ignition. Today, they are a factor of 10 away, which would be equivalent of taking a road trip from Denver, driving to San Francisco, and then when you get to Oakland, deciding to stop and turn around and go back to Denver. So my question is, will you let NIF shut down on your watch, or will we see it continue to march forward toward ignition?
Well, I'll have to talk with Mr. Albright about that statement. Certainly the intent is to have NIF, we need it strongly engaged, certainly in our stockpile stewardship program.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Moniz, and thank you for interpreting that graph on the fly without any warning ahead of time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Right.